Hi everyone, welcome back to video number 3 of building our International Lone Star Legacy Cabin Edition. In that last video we was working on the chassis and the frame, and let's see, if you downloaded the files that I put on the last video, you should have a frame similar to this. And what I end up doing, I end up just taking the frame off the Freightliner Legacy that I created when I made that truck. It just saved me a lot of work, and it had the shape of the frame that I wanted, and it was pretty close to what the International Lone Star had. So that's why I included that frame. There was 2 frames. Let me I'll try to open both these frames if I can. I'm not sure which frame this one is. I can't remember which one I saved it, but there's a long one and a short one. The long one is one I created for the Lone Star. I guess the front cab and the front hood section is a little bit longer than the Freightliner, so when I put everything on it, the frame was too short, and so what I end up doing is once I put the sleeper on and test fitted the cab, I realized that frame was too short, and so I end up having to stretch the frame out to better suit my needs. Okay, so let me load this. Let's see. Okay, so this is the frame that I built, and let's take these wheels off of here for a second. So we'll just hide these wheels. I haven't talked to you about the wheels and stuff yet, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Alright, one more. Alright, so this is basically how your frame, if you followed my last video, that your frame should look similar to this. And let's go back to our chassis. We'll just hide everything. Alright, so and you notice I got all these different objects. Find the frame. There's the frame. Okay, so here's the frame, and if you'll notice, well, in this lesson, I'm going to talk about model locators and pins and how everything aligns, because there seems to be some questions with that. So the world origin, which I refer to as 0 in a lot of my videos, and I know that's not quite right, but the world origin is where the X, Y, and Z axis come together. And if you look at this chassis locator pin is right on the world origin, which is 0. So everything that falls in this chassis here is called a root object, and everything that attaches to this root object automatically is referenced to this 0 point. So any part that I add to this root object and I move into place along this frame, as long as it stays in that root object, that's where its X, Y, Z axis is going to be. So if you look at these object items, even though this is just one object, and as I keep adding objects, this is the front end of the Lone Star, the engine, shocks, front axle, and everything. As long as it attaches to this frame, and this frame is it's going to be referenced to this zero, this world origin. Okay, so anytime that you add a part and move it into place, as long as it stays in this root object, that's where it's going to stay, and that makes modeling a whole lot easier. But as you are well aware, there are a lot of different parts to a truck, and they're not all attached to one root object. There are several root objects. And so if I turn on all my parts, and as you can see, every one of these parts inside that root object I've already moved into position. All right, now let's talk about what if we want to add a part that's not. So let's take a wheel, for example. So we want to import a wheel into Blender. So we go to import, and let's see. All right, so here's our wheel, and I said we'll put a front wheel on. All right, so import the front wheel. All right, so here's our front wheel. Notice that it came in right at the zero. So if we find where the root object come in, this front, and we this where it says front 002, this is our root object, and these are all the parts inside our root object. So if we click on the root object, you notice that it's on 0. And so the reason why it came in on 0 is because that's where my cursor was. So let me delete this again. All right, and we'll just move our cursor. All right, so let's move our cursor up here. All right, so if I import that wheel again, see, now it comes in where that cursor is. Okay, that's where that root object will always come in where that cursor is at. All right, so how do we get it on the front axle here? Well, you can move your root object using grab, and see you can move it all around, try to get it in the right spot. You know, but there's much easier ways, and that's what we use model locators for. So if we delete this again, so everything that attaches to this chassis that is not in the root needs a model locator. So if we go up into the chassis, all right, now we're in the chassis root. All right, and you see all these model locators. These are all your locators, and we look for one that's called wheel, and you see they're labeled wheel R, which is a rear wheel, rear wheel, rear wheel, and there's two that's wheel F. My eyesight's going bad, sorry. All right, so let's take one of the front wheels. All right, and we highlight it and see where the model locator is and where the arrow. Okay, so that model locator is placing that wheel on that front axle. So what we need to do, we need to put the cursor on this model locator. So the way we do that, we go Shift S, and that brings up a pie chart. And you have some selections here. You got cursor, and I've only used like 3 of them. So cursor world origin, cursor to selected, and selection to cursor. If we select cursor to selected or number 2, it puts our cursor right on that axle. Alright, so now that our cursor is right on that axle, we can import that front tire again. And now it shows up in the right spot on the axle. And so that's what locators do. Alright, so let me, since I already have the wheel already on this chassis, let me delete this back out. And then remember, if I want to view everything, I can just go to SCS Tools, the Visibility Tools, and select all the objects. Okay, so now all my objects in the front wheels, you know, they're on the right axle, and I have my rear wheels. Okay, and I do this so I just see how everything looks and match it up. So I like to add the wheels. And so, and as you can see, that I took a lot of parts off the Freightliner. Basically, everything on this back half is off the Freightliner, and just because I thought it had a whole lot more detail to it. And I like it. And if you'll notice that that's a shadow. And so I made everything fit. So here's a drive shaft. You know, I got the drive shaft connected to the transmission. You're gonna have to model it. You have to make sure everything's in its right place. Okay. So anyway, if you've done the chassis video, then your chassis should look something similar to this. Maybe not have the wheels on it, but you can. In the link, I'll have the wheels, or you can convert them just like you did all the other models, or you just create your own wheels. I mean, use custom wheels, whatever you want. These are just stock SCS wheels. And like I said, I just use them mainly for just checkout placement, make sure everything looks okay. All right, so if you got this frame, next we need to start building our truck. So the next logical piece to add would be the cabin. So in order to add the cabin, we'll go to File, Import, Game Object, and then we go to our cabin. And let's see. Whoops, I'm in Freightliner, so let me go back. I want the International Lone Star. And this is kind of a guessing game, I guess, of which cabin to use. We can select the day cabin. And notice where the cabin came up. And remember, the reason why that cabin came up like that is because it comes in where our cursor's at. Because our cursor is on the front tire, that's where it came in. So you can fix this one or two ways. You can delete it and either import it back in with the cursor at 0 or the world origin, or you can go Shift S, cursor to world origin, so it moves it back to the 0, and then you can find a cabin. In this case is a day. Click on that and select it, and go Shift S and go Selection of Cursor. Alright, now your cabin is in the right spot. And then, you know, if you want those and everything. So here's our cabin. I tried working with this cabin, but I found that the most suitable cabin was not the day cab. It was now I tried the low rise. So let's delete this day cabin out. And the easiest thing to do is just highlight everything. You can hit shift to make sure you select everything, and then hit delete on your keyboard, or right click and hit delete. So now we'll import the cabin that I worked with, which was the Skyrise cabin. Alright, so this was the cabin that I started with. And because the cabin has to fit on the frame in the correct location with the front end and everything, I fit the cab before I fit the sleeper. So this will have to be modified. And one of the things that I like to do is break the cabin. If I find the cabin here, let me close all these up. If you keep them closed, it keeps it a little bit organized. So here's our cabin. You know, there's a lot of objects in the cabin, so I like to close what I can, and then I just open them one at a time, so I only have to work with like one piece. I'm gonna get rid of that shadow. Can't see the bottom of the truck with the shadow there. Okay, so there's our cabin, and this is all one piece. Alright, I already know that I have to modify this in order to put my legacy sleeper on it, but anyway, I want to test fit other stuff on this chassis. So I want the hood on there. So if you'll notice, a lot of times you'll find locators either on your cabin or on your chassis. And I see one for hood. So I'm going to put my cursor on the hood, cursor to selected, and then I'm going to import the hood. Let's see, so that's an accessory. And there it is. And we only have one accessory for hood. And there is the hood. Okay, so I did have one question that came up about this purplish part you see here. So anything on your truck that you want to cast a shadow in the game, like on the asphalt. So if you add different options to your truck, like you want a different set of stacks, or you have a spoiler, or anything that when the sun hits it, you want to cast the shadow on the pavement, then it has to have a shadow shader on it, and that's what this blue is. And if you look at it, it's like this unique color. And if you look on the shader, it's shadow only. So anything that you see purple like this is used to cast a shadow, and that's the only thing it's used for. But every part on your truck has to have a shadow, from your wheels to your frame, transmission. Because if it doesn't have the shadow, the sun will just shine right through it and be like it was missing. So if this shadow here wasn't on the hood, it looked like a cab and frame and a block engine rolling down the road, because this hood would not cast a shadow. So these are very important. We'll get more into that later, but I had a question on one of the comments about the purplish shader that was used on some parts, and that's what it is. It's just a shadow caster. So let's see. So what I do, I know the shadow's highlighted, so I just click on it and make the shadow go away. All right, so there's our hood. All right, and basically what you want to do, you want to just keep building your truck with parts until you get the look that you want. And so just to give you an idea, this is where I am on the Freightliner. I mean on the Lone Star. So I just start building the truck. Now this is a long way from being finished, but I just build the truck with all the parts to make sure they fit right and look right, and everything from the exhaust pipes, air tanks, everything is correct. Make sure all the bolts, everything is in the correct location. Consuming process, but you already know how to do that because we've done it right here on this truck, and that's everything that you saw in that other section. I started out doing like this, and it's real hard to really show you everything that I did to create that truck, but just remember, keep your make sure where your cursor's at. The world origin is the X, Y, and Z axis, and then it's just grabbing and putting the part where you want it. Now you will have to learn how to mod things, like this right here's got to be modded. So if you go in tab and you go into your wireframe mode, you just looking for a place to cut this at, and what I do, I import the sleeper, and I will include the sleeper in the files with this video. Well, I'll borrow the sleeper. So in order to take something off another truck, you just highlight it, and I think this is part of the cabin. But here it is. Once you select it, it will light up which part it is. So I just copy this and I put it on this truck frame. All right, so you can kind of see how the two go together, and you can see that in order for it to look right, you're going to have to do some modifications to it. And on my truck, if you use the original frame from the Freightliner, it places these wheels way too close to the back of the cab, and so that's why I stretched it out a little bit. And I think I may have, I think that's pretty close because I took it off the truck I already modified. That's pretty close. But anyway, you can see the wire frame about where you have to cut this cabin, and you can see where this top has to be edited a little bit to make it come in a little bit short. But it's not hard. It's not hard to edit. You just kind of look where you need to cut the cab at, and just eliminate everything from that point back. So what I do, I highlight the back, make sure that you're in the X-ray mode, and then I hit Control L to see what's connected to it. There it is, so Control L, so I can see everything that's attached to that wire frame. And I don't know why it didn't go through the whole truck. Let's try this again. All right. Control L again. All right. So here we go. So I can see everything that's attached to that section. And I don't want to delete this part. Alright, so I'll take a different tack. A lot of times it's easier because it's already got the cut lines in it for you for the different chassis. Alright, so that's pretty close. So the way this looks, right here is where that cut line is going to be along the side. Because I'm going to eliminate these vertices over here, it's going to remove the faces and the lines from this section. So it's going to cut pretty much right there. So everywhere you look, that's where it's going to be cut at. So, so I've cut the chassis or the cab, and then I will let's see. I don't know which. Trying to find. I think that's it. There we go. Okay, so that's not bad, but I need to cut a little bit more, and so just kind of like a surgeon, you cut the cab, make sure you don't cut too much of it, but you just and if you do end up cutting too much, just undo it. Alright, so that doesn't look too awfully bad. Now you are going to get a little bit of clipping between the cab, but that's okay. I mean, you don't want a lot of clipping and you don't want gaps. So you can see you have a gap here, and I think you have one here. That may go away because what we need to do, we need to bring this top part of this cab where the air deflector is, we need to bring it down so that it matches better with the sleeper. Alright, so the way we do that, and there are several, you can model it lower. Let's see. But the way I did it, if you hit if you find everything that's attached, and this looks like this whole deflector is attached, so what I can do, I can scale this down to where it meets the sleeper a little bit better. So I want to bring this down, so I want to scale it in the Z axis, so hit S and Z, and we can scale it. Alright, and now you can tell that it's out of place on top of the cab, so we have to bring it down. So we hit G and Z, and we'll lower it back into place. And you know, just adjust to match. Just make sure, like, see, you got gaps you gotta, and then you've got this piece that's sticking out right here. So we'll scale it into Z, and try to get it put back into place. All right. But it is a lot of trial and error. So you just got to keep working with it till you get the look you want. And then, you know, once you get it fitted on there, you may decide that it's too low or too high, or you know, you can rescale it and reposition it. Or another option is just make this a separate part. Now, if you want to make this a separate part, remember from our other video, since I have it selected, you just hit P, and then you can separate it by selection. So if you hit selection, now it creates a new part right here. So if you, and there's our deflector. You just created a new part. So that's one option. Then you can just work with a deflector to get pretty much the shape that you want. But anyway, there is a little bit of modeling, and I'll include this sleeper box in the files. And the last thing I want to talk about on this video here is materials. So everything has a material to it. So the red you see, the black of the frame, the chrome on the wheels, everything has a material. And I was working with another reader that was creating a bumper, and we talked a lot about materials. So let me start with a new. All right, so let's import a new part. All right, let's see. Well, I tell you what, let's look at something I've got already open. All right, so let's look at this truck here. All right, so I've got a lot of different materials on this truck, and not all of them came from the International Lone Star. Some materials I borrowed from different trucks that I use parts in. Some parts I made, like these side skirts. These side skirts I modeled. These lights I modeled. But let's see. Let's look at these boxes right here. Okay, so these boxes I took, and I pretty much use them on all my trucks because I like them, you know, and I think they look good. But you see I don't know if you can see, you see these little lines that go through the boxes that does the reflection like that. they're not actually, if you go to, if you look at the boxes, they just look like regular boxes. There's no crease in them at all. And those creases are created by what's called an end map, or you might hear them called bump maps. But anyway, if you look at them, these are just simple boxes. There's nothing in it. Okay, that's all done with. So if we click on the boxes and we go to the materials tab, which is the thing that looks kind of like a red earth. Okay, you can see that the material is mat 0017-62, and there are 3 users of that material. Now this is important too. These 3 users mean there's 3 parts on this truck that uses this material. So if you change material on one part, it will affect the other 2. So as long as there are 3 users of this one material here, so the best thing to do is get in the habit of creating individual users, so that way you can modify one part without affecting the other parts. And so the way you do that is just by clicking on this number where it says 3 users, just click on it, and now it creates a new material for each one of your objects. So that way, like I said, I can make all the edits of this one I want, and it will not affect objects. And that will bite you a lot if you forget to do that. So make sure that but what it will do, it gives you a lot of materials. So there's a lot of materials being used in this truck, and especially like these shadows, you'll see a lot of those. You'll see a lot of chrome. You'll see a lot of paints. All right. So, and these are all SCS truck materials, and I can place any material that I want on any part on this truck. So let's say that I wanted I wanted these to be painted. I can click on the boxes, and I can go down here to materials, and I'll just assign it a paint shader. So I look in my list of materials, and I look for one that has the paint on it. And if I want it matched, say the sleeper, and this is something else I'll do, I'll click on the sleeper and I'll look at what material that's at. So this sleeper is matte 0000 color .001. So I want that same color for my boxes. So I'll go back to my boxes and I'll look for that material. Because I know it has the same settings of what I want. Alright, so here's the matte 000 color .001. So I click on that, and now my boxes are red. I have put a paint shader on that, and but notice it's just flat across. There's no diagonal lines whatsoever on it. Like I said, because that was created by the end map or bump map. Alright, and to show you again, these are end map, and then you can check. So it has the end map selected, and one of the things that every time you move a part from one truck to the other, you have to make sure that you move your materials with it. And as you can see, this base, if you see this with the exclamation point, it means that that material is not in your your mod base folder. Okay, reflections normally it's a shared file, so you can just resync it by just hitting the settings. But this we have to actually, if you put your cursor over it, you can see that you have a file path to that materials. So in this case, this is from the Freightliner Cascadia 2019. It's because where I copied the toolboxes from. And this is located in textures folder, and it's texture 62.tobj, which means I gotta look for the 62 DDS file. And then the end map, this is located in the Freightliner Cascadia 2019 textures 53. So what I need to do, I need to get these two texture files into my mod file. So that's where you'll be working with files quite a bit too. So what I normally do, I normally keep both truck files open. So this is the Freightliner Cascadia, because that's where I borrowed a lot of the parts from. And this is the International Lone Star. And I think that was, let me see, I'll make sure I got that file path correct. All right, so vehicle truck Freightliner Cascadia 2019 in the textures folder 62. All right, so Freightliner Cascadia, this is a textures folder, and then I always like to place these on view, and you'll be working with a lot of texture files. All right, and so this is 62 DDS, and this is a TOBJ. So let me get my international truck up. So if you notice, I don't have a texture folder in my International Lone Star. So what I'll do, I'll create me a texture folder. All right, and then I'll open the textures folder, and then I will copy these over to my International Lone Star. Now remember, this goes into your base, because these TOBJs are word text files. These will not work in your mod. These have to be converted over. So be careful with them, because it won't work. And I also know I need to get these two. All right. Okay, so I have my texture files in there, but these TOBJs are wrong. So I have to change that Freightliner Cascadia to the International Lone Star. And if you copy a lot of files over, you can use let me find the program. I've got so many things open. All right, you can use what's called Notepad++, which is what I like to use. So select no, and then you can hit let's see, find in files, and this is how you change a lot of files at one time. So I know I may be about to lose you here, but just bear with me. So Freightliner _Cascadia 2009. And this one you're working with a lot of files. When you move a lot of texture files over, instead of going in, because you can go into these files and you can just change this. And make sure that this matches this. So I can change it that way, or if I have a lot of files, I can use this Notepad++, and that is spelled wrong. All right, hold on. Make sure I don't get screwed up here. But anyway, you can go to Notepad++ and you can have it search for, in this case, I would have had it search for the Freightliner Cascadia, and then replace all the Freightliner Cascadia with the International Lone Star. But I spelled that wrong. If you'll notice that you can't have more than 13 characters in this name, and so SCS shortened it is actually INT national instead of international. So that's I spelled it correctly, but it is International Lone Star. So I'll save that, and then yeah, right here, the Freightliner Cascadia 2019. If you was to take this, copy, and go here, you can hit this replace in file with the INT national _Lone Star, and then you can just go to the directory, in this case the base file. So you come down to, let's see, desktop, and video tutorials, mod file, and then I can have it search the vehicle folder. So I select the folder, and everywhere it finds Freightliner Cascadia 2019, I want to replace it with International Lone Star. So I hit replace in files, and then it'll search everything in my Lone Star vehicle folder for that Freightliner Cascadia, and it will automatically change it to the International Lone Star. So that's if you move like a huge folder of materials over, if you borrow them a great deal from, say, the Kenworth or Peterbilt. So in this case, it says right here there was 2 file occurrences that were replaced. So there was 2 files that I had missed, and it still had the Freightliner Cascadia 2019. It replaced it with the International Lone Star. So I don't know really which 2 files that was. Well, that was one of them right there. So if we go back and we look at this, so now it's been replaced. Yeah, I must have had 2 files over in here, because like I said, I borrowed a lot of materials get moved over. So we're going to go back to our truck. Alright, so now this texture file that's looking for should be in my International Lone Star. So make sure I go back to the right folder, and I go to the mod files in the base, make sure it's in the base, and then truck, then an International Lone Star, and then we have the textures, and this one is 62. So select 62. All right, so now that material is, I got to replace this end map. So I click the folder. Let's see. It usually saves it. Let's see. Mod files. Base. Vehicle. Let's see. Truck. International. Texture. 63. I think that's 63. Yep, 63. All right, so now I have nothing red for these boxes. It's in my base mods, but you can do this as you bring parts, because when you open Blender and you take the part off one truck and put it on another truck, those textures are going to come with it, and so everything's going to look okay. But when you go to export it, it's going to cause you, if it doesn't cause you errors, once you put it in the game, it's going to show up as that bright red or pink, which means the texture is missing. So you got to make sure that you look at all your objects. And sometimes, like this end map right here, it will not sync, so something's wrong with it. And sometimes you have to actually point it back to the file. And that happens from time to time. This is decals in. All right, there's something I have to do some investigation on that, but this will generally go in okay, but there's something that Blender's not liking about that end map. So I'll might be a setting that's off in it that it's looking for. But I'll investigate it, and when I find out, I'll let you know what it is. But anyway, look at all your pieces, and those probably have the two same end maps. So I will. And see if everything's okay, you just resync your materials and the red goes away. So there is something, but this right here is what you do not want. You don't want that exclamation point in there, which means that texture is actually missing from your mod base folder. Okay, so anyway, I think that's going to do it for this video. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the video. Put in comments anything, questions you have. I'll try to answer it in the next video. And just keep building your truck. I'm gonna keep building this one, and we'll talk a little bit about modeling in the next video. So take care, stay safe from COVID, and class is dismissed.